Hi everyone, I'm just going to talk about three things: Webquest, Google Sites and design thinking, because they relate to this week's work and they also relate to the major assessment piece. Webquests, all they are is a predetermined structure for an online activity, so it's sort of like a template that you follow. It makes it much easier for you than just trying to think of a learning activity from scratch. I chose that because it has a lot of advantages. For example, it's been tried and proven over many years. If you look on the web, you'll find so many resources associated with Webquests over the years. It emphasises problem solving and higher order thinking, which I think is a very important thing. It's just too easy to create an activity that requires people to just go out and find some information and represent it. Also, there's a massive amount of help on the internet, so in online courses I think that's really important, to provide as much support as possible. And with Webquest, there's so many things on the web. I'll put in the subject site quite a few examples of these, like videos, resources, courses and so on. There's even universities that offer whole subjects on Webquest, and then there's also information in the literature as well. It makes it much easier for people without experience to start designing an online learning activity, so I think that's a great advantage as well. Its disadvantage is, if you're very experienced, then sometimes it's a pain to have such a restriction as a predetermined structure. But I think for most people, especially if they're just starting, it's a real advantage, but it can be a disadvantage as well. Now, Google Sites, Webquest can be found in Google Sites, and we're going to create our Webquest in Google Sites, but Google Sites is simply a free tool for developing and hosting websites, and it can be used for many other purposes apart from just a Webquest. You can use it to create a personal website. It could be for a university subject website, it could be for a school website, a newsletter. So if you name it, it could be used for any sort of website. Previously, we didn't have this sort of thing available, so students use a standalone web creation design package, and they use that software, and then when they were finished it, they created all the files. Then they had to find a free online hosting service, which was quite hard because most of them you've got to pay for. And then when you find that service, you've got to set it all up and then download an FTP program, and that transfers the files into the online space, so all that's quite complicated and time consuming. Whereas with Google Sites, when you create the site, it's hosted straight away, you can see the results straight away, there's no costs, there's no uploading files, so it's much easier to use, especially if people haven't tried this sort of thing before. They can quickly design a website and have it going live on the web before they know it. Making it better, and tailoring it to a Webquest then takes a bit more work. To be able to use it, you need to have a Gmail address. I think most of you have got that already, but if you haven't got one, get one. And then to find it, if you just go into Google itself and Google Google Sites, you'll get the link, and then if you've signed in with Gmail, you'll be able to automatically go in there and get started. And of course, we've got resources in the subject site, like the videos that we've specially created to take you through step by step. That leads me to the last thing, and that's design thinking. And design thinking is very important because even though you've got a predetermined template, there are still many other design things to keep in mind that in the past people didn't do such a great job of. One of them was pretty obvious, and that is a design strategy. A common one is to spend a lot of time considering the user. So you need to consider the user from the point of view of the system that the user operates in. In this case it would be a student, so you'd have to have empathy for the student, think about the student's level of development, what sort of resources are available to the student, all of these sort of things. With design thinking, that's one of the strategies where you consider the user and understand the user. Of course, there's quite a lot of other categories in design thinking, and under each category a series of strategies that can help you achieve that. So we use that as just an extra way of scaffolding the design process. Even though you have a predetermined template, that doesn't actually cover everything. It just gives you broad categories in which to follow that activity through, and that the students will do when they do that activity. So design thinking really comes in useful, and we've got different resources in the website to support that. So just very briefly, that's the overview of the three things. And to find out a lot more, you need to go into the subject materials folder and do a lot more reading, a lot more searching on the web to develop a greater understanding of each of these three things. But that's, pretty much the nitty-gritty of the things.